Thanks everyone for showing up today and being part of our webinar, talking about how Oracle conducts their secret audits. And like Marissa said, if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat box and we'll answer them at the end of the session. We did get one question before today. Unfortunately, it wasn't really associated with audits, so it's a completely different issue. So we'll answer that directly with the person who asked it, after this. But this session should last between 30 and 45 minutes. We've got an inauguration to watch, and I don't want to keep everyone from that. So let's get right into it today. Our agenda, I'll give you the 2-minute commercial for Palisade Compliance, and then we'll get into what is a secret audit, what is an unofficial audit, and how does Oracle go about doing that? We'll talk about, there are many different kinds of audits that Oracle conducts, and we'll just focus or highlight 3 of them, the sort of 3 most common that we're seeing in the market today. And then we'll talk a little bit about how Oracle gathers information. You might be surprised on how that happens. And then what you can do to protect yourself should you find yourself at risk of being audited, or you think you're sort of in that position, or you just want to avoid being in a position. And then finally, at the end, we've got some free stuff for you. So if you want free stuff, you got to stay to the end. So that's our hook. A little bit about Palisade. And then we've got 2 questions that I like to ask at the beginning. So we'll have a couple of poll questions, and that will help set the stage for the specifics on what we discussed today. So Palisade Compliance, we've been in business now since 2011. We're an independent management consulting firm that uses our own technology to help our customers make really good decisions around their Oracle licensing and contracts. So we're 100% independent. We're not an Oracle partner or reseller. We help with audit defense. We help with general strategy and advising. We help with ULA certifications, support reductions, all those types of things that you see there. We're not a technical firm. We don't help with, like I said, we don't sell Oracle. We don't help with implementations or anything like that. It's really a business management consulting firm. What makes Palisade different? If I look back when I started the company in 2011, there were probably 3 companies out there that did a little bit of what we do. And now there's 50, right? So 50, you can go out. So what makes us different? Obviously our independence, our expertise. I spent 16 years at Oracle. I was their global vice president of contracts and business practices and audits and migrations and all that fun stuff. And I did that from 95 until 2011. The folks we have on our team have similar backgrounds to myself, where they led global operations and global teams, both from an executive level to an individual contributor level, where they were actually doing the audits, drafting the contracts, doing the migrations, and all of that. We just focus on Oracle, so we don't, if you've got a Microsoft problem, we can't help you with that. We do have friends of Palisade that we can refer you to. We've built our own technology. We've got an amazing assortment of customer references and customer successes that we love to highlight. And we're really secure in what we do. So we protect all of your information, your Oracle confidential information, your contracts, your technical information. So we've got that locked down really well. That's the end of the commercial. So now let's talk about you guys, and let's get to our poll questions. So like I said, there's 2. So the first question is, have you ever been audited by Oracle? I'd like to get some of your experiences here in terms of, are we newbies? We've never seen an Oracle audit. I remember the first client that I had at Palisade. It was a company out in California. First time I actually went to see a client, I should say. And, I was going out there on the pretense of helping them with just sort of staying in compliance. And then when I got out there and started digging through the paperwork, I found that they were actually in an Oracle audit and they had no idea. They got the official letter from Oracle. So they were in the middle of an audit. And sometimes Oracle doesn't use the word audit to audit you. So some people don't know. So Marissa, let's see the results of that question. Have you ever been audited by Oracle? So half the group says no, but they're worried, right? They think one is right around the corner. So this is the class for you guys for sure, because we can help you sort of, Oracle, if they're on track to audit you officially or unofficially, here's a good time to sort of alter that path and take ownership of that. And then we had a few of them say, yeah, we've been audited and came out with no issues. And a few said we came out with sort of major issues, right? So a little smattering there of answers, but sounds like most people are worried. So then the next question is, think about your environment today. Are you in compliance with your Oracle contracts? So there you go. And, yes, I know we are because we've got a great process. I think we are. That's somebody else's job. I have no idea, no way, or I'd rather not say. So we have found if Oracle keeps digging in an audit, they're going to find something, right? So I can count on one hand out of the hundreds of clients that we've had over the years, how many have actually been in compliance with their license agreements from Oracle, right? So, obviously that's the nature of our business. People come to us when they are worried. So it's very rare just because Oracle licensing is so complex and you as a client of Oracle are so dynamic in your M&A activity and how you deploy technology. So let's see, where are we with that answer, Marissa? So interesting. One person, or the number one answer here, sorry, is I believe we are. Somebody else must be working on it. So not me, but somebody else is taking care of that. We've got a little bit of yes, a little bit of no, and some folks don't want to answer the question. So, again, 14% say yes. That means 86% is maybe, I don't know, could be, I'd rather not answer. So that's typical, right? That is very typical in terms of, what we see in the market is, very few clients are able to achieve compliance. And it's not a one-time thing, it's an ongoing process. All right, so good background there, thank you. So let's set the stage here for, secret audits or unofficial audits. And basically, on the one side, you've got official audits from Oracle. And what is an official audit? They should be easy to spot. You get a letter, probably an email with a PDF attached to it. Most of them are coming from Romania now. And it'll say, you've been selected for a license review in accordance with section whatever of your contract. Sometimes they use the word audit. A lot of the times they say license review. Whatever vernacular they use, it's an audit, right? So you have to think of it as an audit. So those are official audits from Oracle. Everything else that we'll talk about today is an unofficial audit, right? So, think about ULAs, think about when you go ask Oracle questions about licensing, and think about that as sort of, hey, am I putting myself at risk of an audit here? Am I telling them something that may come back to bite me later? So again, on the one hand, you've got official audits, and on the other hand, you've got unofficial audits. And I call them secret audits because often customers just don't know, like they are being audited, whether they have received the letter or not, right? So it might not be an official audit letter from Oracle, but if Oracle finds non-compliance, those compliance findings are real, even though the audit is not official. So something that you have to deal with. The problem with unofficial audits is that they're often more dangerous than the real audits, right? I sort of wanted to call them fake audits, but that's got too much baggage attached to it. But you have to think of these unofficial audits and why are they more dangerous? Well, at least in an official audit, there are some contractual safeguards. For example, you get an audit letter from the Oracle LMS team, and according to your contract, typically you've got 45 days to respond and start the audit, right? So that's 45 days where you can prepare yourself and get yourself ready and make sure you've got everything in order so that you can proceed with the audit. With an unofficial audit, there's no protection, right? There's no 45 days, right? Oracle asks the question, you probably give them the answer right away. So there's sort of no planning for you, right? So all of those safeguards out the window with an unofficial audit. There are no rules on how they're conducted. Now, Oracle is very liberal in how they apply the rules of audits. If you read your contracts, there are very few contractually stated rules of how audits will be conducted. Things like you'll provide reasonable assistance and it will not interfere with your business operations. Those are usually the two rules that are there, and there's a notice period. Other than that, it's a free-for-all, right? And what I mean by that is Oracle is going to make a lot of demands on how things work in an audit, and it's up to you to sort of go back to the contract. In an unofficial audit, there's none of that, right? There's no rules around it won't interfere with your business operations, right? Or you'll give them reasonable assistance, right? So all those things go out the window. And depending on who in Oracle is conducting those unofficial audits, they might have very different rules on what they think is appropriate. So you need to be careful with that. Unofficial audits, secret audits, are often conducted by people who have no idea how licensing works. We've seen Oracle salespeople try to conduct quasi audits or secret audits of customers and pull data and make statements to customers around licensing that they have no qualifications to make. I mean, I've been on more than one phone call where an Oracle sales rep was saying something about the contract that just wasn't accurate. And I don't say they're lying, but they're getting training internally to say certain things that might not jive with your agreement with Oracle. And they're just not contracting, they're not licensing experts. So you often get technical people at Oracle, consulting people, even attorneys at Oracle who will make statements around licensing, and you sort of have to correct them. So you really want to make sure that, at least when you're dealing with the LMS team, for as much grief as we give them, at least they have some training on licensing. Now, we might not agree with their conclusions and their methodology, but at least there's something there that you can, hang your hat on. With these other secret audits, there's really nothing. Obviously, they're heavily influenced by sales. I mean, official LMS audits are also heavily influenced by sales, but these unofficial audits, these secret audits, are really, really, for the most part, driven by salespeople. So you just want to keep that in mind because they're trying to sell you. They're trying to get you to spend more money with Oracle. And then the real reason why these secret audits are more dangerous than official audits is that you're just not ready for them. You're not prepared. Sometimes you're thinking Oracle's out there to help you, right? So first customer I had ended up, they were spending $35,000 a year with Oracle on technical support. And this is before they were a client. And they called up Oracle and said, can you help me reduce this $35,000 a year? And Oracle said, absolutely, we're going to help you. We're there for you. Fill out these spreadsheets, run these scripts, because we want to see what you're using. And then we're going to help you reduce. Again, they were not our customer because they wouldn't have done this if they were. So they did. They did exactly what Oracle said in the spirit of partnership. They filled out the spreadsheet. They ran the scripts. Oracle came back with a $1.1 million non-compliance finding, right? And a company that small, we're actually bigger than that company now. So they would go out of business if they had to give Oracle $1.1 million, right? So that's what I talk about, sort of one of the examples of a secret audit. Is this customer thought Oracle was there trying to help them reduce their support costs, but they weren't. So there's a whole bunch of ways that Oracle secretly audits their customers. And again, you can say secret audit, you could say stealth audit, you could say non-audit, unofficial audit, whatever word you want to use. But in all of these scenarios, if it looks like an audit and sounds like an audit, it's an audit. Surprisingly, one of the biggest ways Oracle does it is because customers ask for it. That's right. Customers go to Oracle. the LMS team, they've got this SIA team, see you later to your budget, software investment advisors, and they've got this other team, GLASS, Global License Advisory Services. It's the same team as LMS. It's all sort of the same cover. It's different parts of the same organization. They're all auditors, right? So Oracle has a website out there where you can go there and get some help. And really, these folks are there to get you to buy Oracle Cloud and move from one place to another. So, and I remember years ago, again, I used to run these groups out of Oracle. We didn't have, I'll put my Oracle hat on for a second, we didn't have this sort of customer facing, we're going to help you organization within the audit team. And someone came to me, the woman who ran the audit team from North America, she's like, we're going to make this great program, we're going to call Managed Services. And Managed Services is going to be there to help customers. You're going to come to us and we're going to help them with their licensing. And I literally laughed at her. I was like, who is going to fall for that? Like, absolutely not. That's ridiculous. But she was very convincing and she convinced me. And you know what? It was really successful. Lots of customers came to us looking for help and we were able to sell them a lot more Oracle. And that's happening today still. So customers going to Oracle is probably one of the most common ways that people are getting audited by Oracle, these secret audits. So you don't think, think about that. Our first customer who spent $30-something thousand on maintenance, they went to Oracle and asked for help and got hit with that $1 million compliance issue, right? So, think about that as you're having conversations with Oracle. So customer initiated audits is actually in the top 3. The second one I'd like to talk a little bit about is ULA certifications. So if you're an Oracle client, you have probably heard of this unlimited license agreement that Oracle has. It's their most popular, Oracle's most popular way. They love the ULA. And the ULA basically says, for a term, you could use unlimited licenses, but at the end, you have to count and tell Oracle how much you're using, right? So what does Oracle do? A couple of things. Number one is they set up their audit teams, LMS, SIA, GLASS, whatever you want to call them, to help customers certify, right? And sometimes Oracle even puts it in their contract as a benefit. They say, listen, at the end of this ULA, you are going to have the opportunity and the benefit to work with our experts to help you certify, right? I mean, they say words similar to that. And you can work with the LMS team. They also put it in their contract as an obligation that when you do certify and tell Oracle, you're going to give them certain data, certain information. And you're going to be reasonable in that interaction with Oracle so they can verify your usage. So that's another way. We tell customers, at the end of a ULA, get ready for an audit. You're going to have to audit yourself. Oracle's going to come in there and check over your work, right? So you really want to be in compliance. But this is sort of the number one way with ULAs that Oracle has set it up. They've institutionalized the audit. So you get to the end of your ULA, you certify, you give Oracle the numbers, then they start asking you for a bunch of information. It's the same information they would ask you in an audit, right? So they ask you to fill out these spreadsheets, to run these scripts, to answer these questions, to send it back. And guess what? They're not just helping you count, right? Because you might have a ULA with 10 products. Well, those scripts are looking for 25 products. And they're looking, Oracle's getting information on how you virtualize, right? And how you do disaster recovery and what you're using the products for. And listen, you have to be in compliance, and we'll talk about this later, there's so many different ways to interpret Oracle licensing, handing all that data to Oracle and letting them certify you. I mean, that's the one thing that drives me crazy with ULAs. And when customers say, well, we're waiting for Oracle to certify us. It's like, no, you certify yourself. And then we give Oracle some information that they can verify that you know what you're doing, right? So ULAs are a big proportion of these secret audits. Again, you don't even know. We had one client who, again, they were not our client. Oracle offered to help. And, what happened was, they had a list of 10 products on their ULA. Oracle never actually told them the quantities of those 10 products. What Oracle did was say, listen, we don't care about that, but you're using all this other stuff. So you need to give us millions of dollars, right? So then it's when the customer got us involved and we had to redo everything, and we had to help them through that process. And it was a year before we got Oracle to go away and understand that, the way they did the audit wasn't exactly right. So that was a long one. And that customer is still a client of ours, but I think they sort of learned their lesson about using Oracle's free certification help, right? It's like going to the IRS and saying, could you audit me, right? Just to make sure I'm giving you the right amount of money. Like, who would do that? And then the final thing, and I put this on here, for a couple of reasons. Number one, it happens. And number two, it's happening a lot around Java, right? Just the threat of audits is often enough to get customers moving on something. So we have not seen Oracle do any official Java audits. And again, official means you get the letter from Oracle audit team. They go in and get data from you, either have you run scripts or fill out spreadsheets or answer questions or what have you, and then give you a report on your Java usage and compliance issues. So we haven't seen any of that, and I have asked multiple sources, and no one's actually seen this elusive official Java audit. But what we have seen is many customers come to us and say, hey, Oracle's really pressuring me. They say I owe them this many millions of dollars if I don't sign a Java UL, right? And again, Java license is something Oracle started charging for a couple of years ago. When Sun, it was free, or at least no cost. Now there's a big cost to it, and everybody loves it. So big Oracle. And I suspect that we'll see official audits, in the near future. Customers get more savvy, and the threat of audit doesn't work anymore. But we see really high success rate for Oracle salespeople when they go in. They just ask a series of questions. Then the customer, oh, yeah, we're using commercial feed. And yes, we want this, upgrades and patches longer than months. And then, well, that means you need to buy it, right? So at Palisade, we've got a good Java white paper or decision matrix, whether or not you need a license. You can go to our website and grab that if you want. But again, just the threat of audits and the posture of Oracle sales is often enough. And then finally, we did a white paper a while back on Oracle's hidden audits. I think it was 2017. And that white paper has aged very well. So if you sort of want to get more detail in how Oracle is going in and doing these audits and sort of more specific on each one, go grab that white paper, go request that white paper. It's probably a little more cloud focused now than it was a few years ago, but the basic categories are very much the same. Okay, now let's talk about, how does Oracle actually get information from you when they do these audits? And again, these could be for the secret audits, and that's what we want to focus on. But, these rules and these comments apply for official audits as well. One question that we get all the time from clients and prospective clients is, well, I'm worried that Oracle software is sending stuff back to the mothership, now in Texas, it used to be in California, sending stuff, that's weird to say that, by the way, sending stuff back to Austin, and they're gathering all this information. And, I just want to say, we've never seen that. We've never seen anything in the Oracle software, especially the on-premise stuff, where it's actually sending compliance information back to Oracle, right? So don't really have to worry about that. What we do have to worry about, though, is when you're using Oracle Cloud Services, right? So it used to be Oracle On Demand. Years ago, it was BOL, and it was On Demand, then it was ACS, and now it's all the cloud OCI and all that fun stuff where you bring your own license, and even where you sort of rent the licenses from Oracle. Now Oracle can see what you're doing, right? And not only can they see what you're doing, but they're very good about this. Oracle's very good about this. They make sure in all their cloud services agreements that it says that they can use your data for license management purposes. Meaning, if you were on premise, they have to send you a letter. You have to run scripts. You have to send them data. And then they can do some analysis. But in this new cloud world, they just have your data, right? So now we have not seen official audits from Oracle, say here's an audit letter and we have your data. But what we have seen, particularly with the older cloud, the Oracle On Demand, we've definitely seen Oracle audit those customers, have access to that data. And in fact, Oracle was the one who implemented some of this software, implemented some of the options that caused compliance issues with clients, right? So the more you're in bed with Oracle, with their cloud and their consulting and all that fun stuff, and using your on-prem licenses in that environment, I think the more exposure you're going to have, because Oracle will be able to do that. Now, again, I just put my Oracle hat back on. If I was running the audit, if I was still running the audit team at Oracle, I would be talking to the Oracle Cloud team and the business practices team to say, what can I do to use this data to do some analysis to find customers who are out of compliance to generate more revenue, right? Why wouldn't you? So that's sort of the attitude that we ask our clients to have as well, is to understand that data is with Oracle now, right? So they still need to notify you, but now they don't need to ask your permission to get it. So how does Oracle get all this information to unofficially audit you, right? How do they do these secret audits? Well, it's very simple. You give them all the data, right? It's very simple. So, I think about, and this is, I'm not sort of comparing these two things, but you think about, how systems are hacked and data security. It's often not a technical hack. It's social engineering, right? It's sort of, you ask someone a question and they answer it, and then now they have the keys to the kingdom. So, think about that in your interactions with Oracle. Oracle support, right? Oracle made a change more than a year ago, providing some level of support to customers who are running their software on VMware, right? So in the past, Oracle said that was unsupported, and they, you had to recreate all those issues on bare metal. Well, they updated that a year ago, and now they're providing support. What they didn't change were the rules around Oracle licensing on VMware, right? So now people are calling into Oracle and telling Oracle, hey, I'm running this on VMware. Can you help me? Well, the sales teams look at those tickets, right? The LMS team will eventually look at some of those tickets, and they're going to know now that you're using VMware, right? And you need to just make sure that you're in compliance with that license agreement. Or another example is you call in for support on advanced compression, but you don't have a license for advanced compression. Your DBA doesn't know that, right? They're just using that product to, take data from one server to another in a more efficient manner, and it's not working properly. So they're logging a ticket. Oracle is, hey, they don't have a license for this. We're going to answer that question, but someone's going to call this customer at some point and talk to them about licensing, right? So, that's one way. Sales meetings, I was talking to a client yesterday who, before the pandemic hit, they were saying that the Oracle salespeople had badges at the company headquarters and can walk up and down the hallways and talk to people all the time. So Oracle salespeople are great at getting information. They're highly paid, highly compensated, highly motivated individuals. So they are really good at what they do, which is extracting data from you to drive more sales, right? So, think about that when you're talking to them. We talked a little bit about customers asking for help, right? Literally going to the audit team and saying, audit me. It is not an exaggeration, happens all the time. So, and obviously if you go to Oracle asking for licensing help, you are much more likely to reveal things that maybe are none of Oracle's business, right? So, think about that. As Oracle is moving to the cloud and they want you to move to their cloud, you're having a lot of discussions. There was an Oracle website out there. It was the TCO of moving your on-prem to Oracle Cloud. So I went on there and I started answering, and it asked you your name and your company name and your company email address and a couple of other questions. But then the first substantive question is, are you running Oracle on VMware? Was the first question that they asked. Now, again, I was not at Oracle when that website was up, but if I was at Oracle and I was running the audit team, I definitely would have been getting all of the responses to those questions to see if perhaps the customer hey, they're running on VMware and they only have a few licenses, there's going to be an issue there. So let me go and reach out to them and help them fix those issues by moving to Oracle Cloud. So, having those technical conversations with Oracle is another way that you give information to Oracle. A lot of folks work for big companies that make announcements about mergers and acquisitions and new product offerings, right? So you're basically putting information in the public domain, which you have to, that talks about things that might put you out of compliance, right? Mergers and acquisitions is a great example where you acquire a company or you are acquired and there's a ULA involved, right? It's sort of the perfect storm of information. So making that those announcements is another way you give information to Oracle. And then finally, talk really briefly about Oracle partners. There's a little cottage industry out there of companies who are Oracle partners who say they're going to help you with your Oracle licensing, right? So we face them all the time. And some of them are very transparent and they say, we're an Oracle partner and you don't have to buy from us. Some of them are not very transparent. They don't even put it on their website that they're a partner and you have no idea. I talked to one customer last week in Australia and I had the unpleasant experience of informing them that the person who is giving them license advice, one of our competitors, is actually a premier Oracle partner, right? And they are supposed to sell more Oracle. So you have to remember that Oracle partners have a contractual relationship with Oracle, right? They got one foot on one side and one foot on the other side. And where their allegiance lies, who knows, right? Where are they going to make more money, from you or from Oracle? That's, how you have to think about it. So, all these ways that you're giving information to Oracle. And when we think about that relationship, it is like a tightrope, high wire act is, you're working with this vendor on the one hand, whose technology is often critical to your business success. But on the other hand, they've got some really tough, questionable, hard-nosed tactics when it comes to compliance and contract interpretation and extracting more revenue from you, right? So by no means would I ever tell a customer you can't talk to Oracle on any subject matter, right? It doesn't make any sense. You need them to be successful and they need you. But going about it with open eyes and a clear mind and understanding their position and their strategy, I think is really, really important if you're going to avoid some of these secret audits. So how exactly do you protect yourself from secret audits? And again, you can use this for real audits too, official audits. Number one thing, and we tell this all the time to clients, is stay in compliance. It's really simple. If you are in compliance, first of all, you're probably not going to get an official audit because Oracle doesn't audit companies that are in compliance. And Oracle will back off of unofficial audits. Why are they going to do it if they're not going to be able to drive behavior? Again, so audits and secret audits are there to generate money by changing your behavior. Okay, you're not buying more Oracle, or you're not making that purchase, or you're not moving in a direction that Oracle wants you to. They'll employ a secret audit to get you to move that direction. Think about the customer who's trying to get out of the ULA and certify, right? Oracle doesn't want you to certify. They want you to do the next ULA, right? So they have a financial incentive. So stay in compliance is by far, more than any other suggestion here, the best thing that you can do to avoid being subject to a secret audit. And if you are, to have penalties coming out of that audit, right? So it's so important we put it in our name, Palisade Compliance, right? So that's number one. To get a little more tactical, make sure when you are in negotiations with Oracle, whether you're negotiating the master agreement, orders, make sure your audit provisions, don't accept the standard Oracle audit provisions. Make sure you've got a really locked down audit provisions that really protects you and requires Oracle to adhere to certain things should they want to audit you. And the other side of that is you can also ask for more NDAs, right? If you're talking to the sales team or a technical team, there's no reason why you can't require an NDA. Listen, we want this to stay in this group here, and nothing will be used for other purposes, right? So there's nothing against doing that, right? Again, we want you to be able to talk to Oracle, but if you're going to talk to Oracle sales and they're just going to turn you into the audit police, it's probably not going to be a very fruitful conversation for either side. So you just want to be careful with that. And there's a lot of Oracle sales reps who make a lot of money just by turning customers in to the audit police, the LMS team, right? So you want to be careful with that. Make sure you've got the right T's and C's, whether it's a standalone NDA for a specific project, or you go back to your master agreements and your order forms and sort of get those audit provisions. I would never ask Oracle or their partners for help with licensing. Licensing is so vague. You know, we talked about virtualization and VMware, and there's nothing in your contracts about that. So what do you think Oracle's going to tell you, right? If I'm Oracle, I'm going to say you need more licenses, right? Here's the interpretation that's best for Oracle, not necessarily the interpretation that's best for you. So Oracle licensing is pretty vague. It's subject to interpretation, and you can really use that. Now, some people are very hesitant to operate in that gray space. They want black and white, and that's fine. But then you create the black and white. Don't let Oracle do it for you. And some folks are very willing and able to operate in the gray space. And I prefer that myself, to operate in that area when it comes to licensing, because when there is an issue and there is a compelling event, you can take multiple paths to get to where you want. Be confident in your position, right? It sort of goes hand in hand with being in compliance. When Oracle says, you know, how many licenses you're using, if you say, I don't know, I think about 70, it's somebody else's job, right? More likely, they're going to ask the next question, like, can you fill out this form? And then we'll help you understand. If you say, if Oracle asks that question and you say, we're using 73, we just did a hardware refresh and I expect we'll use 84 next week, and we have 117 licenses, so we've got a nice cushion, right? Answer it that way, you're not going to get the secret audit. They're probably not going to ask you the next question, you know, can you fill out this spreadsheet to make sure? Not going to happen. So be very confident in your position, or if you're a good bluffer, make Oracle believe you're confident. Now, we can't just lie. We can't just stay out of compliance, right? If you don't know if you're in compliance, that's okay. You don't have to tell Oracle, but then go do the work to find out that you're in compliance. And if you're not in compliance, fix it, right? You know, you can either fix it and have multiple ways to fix it, or Oracle will fix it for you, right? Either way, eventually this compliance problem will be rectified. Have some level of experience on your team, right? You know, we're often called in because maybe people left the organization, there's no one there. You're never going to have, however large your company is, you're never going to have the experience like Palisade has, right? We've got hundreds of years of experience just dealing with Oracle, right? And you don't need that on staff, right? But there is a certain level of competence that's needed to understand, you know, Oracle licensing and your specific agreements with Oracle and sort of how to approach them. So it's really good if you have some level of expertise, and then if you can supplement that, you know, there's our little Palisade commercial. You supplement that with, you know, some outside expertise when needed. It's a fantastic position, right? We don't have to go bananas, you know, hiring a full-time staff of people to do Oracle license management. It's just not worth it. It's not needed. That's not your business. Your business is doing other things. And then, you know, for the 50% of folks who think they're at risk, get some help now, right? Get help now before Oracle helps you, right? And I use air quotes when I say Oracle helps you. So you just, you know, whether it's Palisade or you find someone else, or, you know, however you want to do it, you know, fix the problem now, right? It is really important. You have a contractual obligation to be in compliance with Oracle. And if you're not sure and it's your responsibility, well, you should be sure, right? So, you know, get some assistance, get working on that problem. And then finally, always remember, no one at Oracle makes more money by helping you spend less with Oracle. There isn't a single commission plan at Oracle that says, if you reduce the customer's payments to Oracle, we're going to give you more money. It just doesn't work that way. I don't have one at Palisade, right? So I don't know of any companies that sort of have that. I doubt very much that the Oracle audit team and the sales team are getting extra money based on your customer satisfaction, you know, how well they do audits, how well they treat you, right? It's very coin operated machines over there. So remember, anytime you go for help, just remember they're always looking to sell you more. And I know that's frustrating, but it's also very liberating because at least you know, right? So there's no secrets, there. And then I promised you all some free stuff at the end, and here it is. So we do have, as part of Palisade Compliance, we have a whole education wing called Paliversity, and we have a whole bunch of classes on Paliversity, and they're all free for you if you want them. So there's the list of classes there. And we're going to add more classes as time goes on. But this is a good place to get started. So, how to control an Oracle audit is on there. So if you do want access to Paliversity, it's all online. We'll just give you a login. You can take these classes 24/7 from wherever, your iPhone, your iPad, or your computer. And then, you can refer back to them. Just send us a note and we'll hook you up. Obviously, if you're one of those folks who are worried, if you're being audited by Oracle, reach out to us, and we'd love to help you. There's plenty of information on our website. You go to Palisade Compliance. We got white papers, we got case studies, we got videos, we've got blogs, anything and everything you want to know around Oracle and how they're doing with their customers. Go there, sign up, you'll get our newsletter. And then finally, you can follow me on LinkedIn. I'm constantly posting things that I see in the news, things that are relevant, sort of our position on Oracle licensing. We do that all the time. We just did a video on using Oracle partners to help you with audits and sort of the pitfalls there, and why independence is good. So that's your free stuff that I promised you. And Marissa, do we have any questions from the audience here?
Yes, we have a couple. First is, do Oracle sales reps get commissions on audit team findings of non-compliance?
Yes. Yes, yes, yes. If they didn't get commissions, they wouldn't call the audit team to audit you, right? So yes, 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 yes. Often the audit teams and the sales teams at Oracle appear to you as separate organizations. I can tell you that anyone who works for Oracle is part of the one Oracle team. So what has happened at times is they play good cop, bad cop. Well, the sales team is just trying to help, but I got to call the audit team, right? And they sort of play that. And then they get on these calls with you. And guess what happens when you hang up? Well, they call each other. So how'd that call go? Oh, yes. Let's approach the customer this way. Let's talk to the customer that way. So you just want to, even if that's not happening, that is the way I want you to approach it, right? Is that they are in cahoots with one another and they are sort of driving. Again, if I was at Oracle, that's what I would do. So I don't know why they wouldn't do that. So yes. Next question.
If you refuse to answer Oracle's unofficial audit questions, is that likely to trigger an audit?
Well, let's go back in our little presentation here. There's your tightrope, right? So there's an art and a science to working with Oracle. And the art is understanding, how much information do I need to give them so they're satisfied? Because remember, it is their intellectual property and they do have a right to make sure that you're using it appropriately. And our efforts to not give Oracle information, that's not about hiding things. That's not about hiding non-compliance. That's about, it's none of your business, or the rules aren't clear. So why would I let you make the interpretation, right? So I think, it's really case by case. In a short answer is yes, it could lead to the next question. It could lead to an official audit, right? And we want to avoid that because it's like, as someone says, unflushing a toilet. You really can't do that. So the last thing we want is to get audited, but we do want to approach, instead of not answering it, sort of answer it in a way that lets Oracle know you have confidence in your position and you're in compliance. Or asking, why are you asking that question? And sort of getting to the root of it, right? So tell me about your virtualization, right? If you just say no, you're probably going to get that audit letter. But if you say, well, why are you asking me? What are the rules around licensing for virtualization, right? And then you could have that conversation with Oracle, because at least you can then establish the rules before you start sending them stuff, right? So you got to really handle these, it's sort of, I don't know how far down the path you are. You have to handle these, one by one. What I tell folks is, that's sort of the most risky time is when Oracle's asking questions, but also the biggest opportunity, because you could, again, as opposed to an official audit where they have to go through the whole process, the good thing about the unofficial audit is you can derail that, right? And sort of short circuit that so that questions stop and you don't get that official letter, right? So if I had more specifics, I could give you more, but you're in a highly leveraged position. That's a high risk, high reward position, right? Where it could go one of two ways. And you want to make sure you handle that appropriately.
Okay, thank you. And we have one more. Does Oracle perform audits for PULA customers? And can the customer put a stop to that audit?
Well, so the PULA, perpetual ULA, just for a little bit of background for those folks who don't know it, we talked about the unlimited license agreement, which is usually, for 3 years, you can use these products here and to do these things with these entities. And at the end of 3 years, you have to tell us and you have to count. So think of the perpetual EULA as exactly the same as EULA, except there is no end, right? There's no, at the end, you have to count, right? I have not seen an official Oracle audit from a perpetual ULA. I have seen Oracle ask questions about software usage. So a perpetual ULA, let's say again, you have 10 products on there, right? And let's say that advanced compression is not one of those 10. Well, if Oracle thinks that you're using advanced compression and it's not on your PULA, they're going to start asking questions. I mean, it's their IP. Why wouldn't they? You're logging tickets for it. So you have to think about, license compliance with a PULA is a little different. It doesn't go away, right? Unless you have every product that Oracle will ever have now and in the future to use everywhere, which there is no PULA that looks like that. So you might not need to know the specific quantities of products you're using when you have a perpetual ULA, but you should be, once a year going in there and measuring, are you using anything that's not on the PULA, right? That's sort of a good guide, right? So you don't need to really get in there and say, oh, this is on virtualization and we're using this many cores and this many processors. You just need to make sure you're using the right stuff. So no, I haven't seen official audits. Yes, I've seen customers being asked questions. This PULA, it's sort of new with Oracle. It's only a few years old. I suspect as customers have these PULAs that are 4 and 5 years old, and Oracle's looking to generate more license revenue, you're going to see a lot more of these unofficial audits and requests and help and offers of help from their audit team. So it's a really good question. And I think you're sort of a couple of years ahead of yourself there because I suspect it's coming.
We actually got one more question in. This person is saying that an Oracle representative reached out to them recently, mentioned that they were a license manager at Oracle and looking to get some dialogue with key personas within this person's customer base about their experiences with Oracle. And they wanted to have a frank and honest chat. Do you think this could be an informal audit approach?
There's the fox and hat, right? That is exactly what I'm talking about here, right? You've got these teams at Oracle, and I don't know who a license manager person is. It sounds like it could be from the software investment advisors or the global license advisory services, SIA or GLASS, or it could be LMS. There are sales teams at Oracle who have built their own sort of informal license teams. But yes, absolutely. I would say that is someone looking to get information that they can leverage to change your behavior or to move you to Oracle Cloud. Doesn't make them a bad person, but here's what that person will not do. Well, you're spending $3 million a year on Oracle support. We're going to help you spend $2 million a year. They're not going to do that, right? What they're going to say is, well, take that 3 million and we'll bring it down to 1 million, but you also have to spend 5 million on cloud. And now you're thinking, well, I just went from 3 million to 6 million. Thanks for the help, right? So that's what those people are designed to do. So again, my response would be, hey, that's great. If you were a Palisade customer, I would say, tell them, hey, we've hired Palisade Compliance. We know we're in compliance. We sort of have a really good handle on our licensing. If you still want to have a conversation, no, we can all get on the phone and have that conversation. And then if you do have that conversation, it's all about listening and not telling, right? So you don't want to tell things that's none of their business. How can you help me? Got it. You ever want to work them off my back, right? Now, your experience might be a little different. Maybe that person actually is there to help you. That's why I say listen to what they have to say. But my intuition here, my gut is telling me that is the secret audit police out there to find something that they could use against you.
Okay, great. Thank you. And that looks like that was all of our questions for today.
Awesome. All right. So I want to thank everyone for your time. I'm just going to go back to this last slide here. Again, hopefully, what we want to do at Palisade is educate the market, right? So if we can give you this kind of education through our webinars, through our online classes, through our white papers, through our experiences, and you don't need us, that's great. You're still in a better position with Oracle. If you ever need our help, please feel free to reach out. And like I said, follow us on LinkedIn and follow us, sign up for our newsletter, and we'll be happy to, keep you up to date on everything. So, thank you everyone for your time. Good luck not being audited by Oracle, and we will see you soon.